This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. Concern from the World Health Organization after progress stalls in the fight against malaria in Africa. We look at the process of international justice after former Central African Republic militia leader Alfred Yekatom faces charges including murder and torture in The Hague. The UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohamed predicts a woman will lead the organization in the near future. Also in the program, the row over Tanzania's cashew nuts, why the army has been called in to help resolve a price dispute between farmers and traders.
As of now, this factory has been handed over to the government under the supervision of the military.
And in sports, with just one match to go, the race to qualify for the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations in Cameroon is getting clearer. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The fight against malaria in the world has stalled after years of decline. This is the warning that came today from the World Health Organization during the launch of the 2018 World Malaria Report. Let's take a look at the key findings. Last year, there were 219 million cases of malaria globally, almost the same as the year before. Children under 5 are the most vulnerable, accounting for more than half of all the cases. Now, the vast majority of cases happened in sub-Saharan Africa. In fact, just 4 African countries, Nigeria, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Mozambique, Uganda, concentrated almost half of the cases globally. Now, last year, more than 435,000 people died from malaria. Children, again, are the most vulnerable since they have not developed proper defenses. Every 2 minutes, a child dies of malaria. Well, Dr. David Schellenberg is the scientific advisor to the World Health Organization's Global Malaria Program, and I'm also joined from Uganda by Dr. Richard Idro. He's a pediatrician at Mulago Hospital in Kampala and an expert on malaria. Thank you both for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa. Dr. Schellenberg, let me first start with you. Why have the numbers of the malaria cases stalled?
It's a very important question, clearly, and we're rather disappointed and very concerned that for the second year in a row now, the World Malaria Report from WHO has documented an increase in the number of malaria cases across the globe. That's not to say that there are pockets where progress continues. And as to the reason why is this sort of mixed rate of progress in the fight against malaria in different places, it could be a very long and detailed answer I give you. But actually, the elephant in the room is about resources. We estimate that approximately $6.6 billion is required to maximise the impact of malaria control tools that we currently have available. But last year, only $3.1 billion was made available for the fight against malaria.
All right, Dr. Idro, let me bring you in here. What is happening in Uganda? Because the numbers don't look too good.
Thank you and good evening, viewers. In Uganda, there has been a stalling in the numbers. So the total number of cases in the past 1 year was about 12 million cases of people contracting malaria. Although the number of deaths from malaria actually reduced. So we had about 5,000 people dying from malaria, down from almost 10,000. And this is in spite of a countrywide distribution of bed nets. So one of the clear interventions where one can prevent the contact between the mosquito and the human. The other one is also pockets where the Ministry of Health has been able to apply interventions to reduce malaria incidence. That's by indoor spraying, and this has been done in isolated areas.
In isolated areas. Let me bring in Dr. Schellenberg here, because in your report, in the report, WHO report, you talk about high burden to high impact response plan. What does this mean practically?
Well, as you said, the vast majority of the burden of malaria is concentrated in relatively few countries. And what we want to do is to change the story from one of high burden to one of high impact. As I said, if there are significant resource requirements, but the last 10 to 15 years have clearly demonstrated that the available tools, insecticide-treated mosquito nets, indoor residual spraying, diagnostic tests and treatment, they all really work. You know, millions of lives have been saved by the application of these interventions. So with more resources, we would be able to increase the coverage. Although various countries have managed to sustain distribution of insecticide-treated mosquito nets across Africa as a whole, only about 50% of people who need prevention or access to an insecticide-treated mosquito net actually are able to use those nets on a regular basis.
Which countries have done well on the continent?
In WHO, it's good that you sort of flagged that there are some good news stories. Ethiopia stands out as one which has actually continued to sustain the gains. Rwanda is also a country which, having gone through a period of 4 or 5 years where there have been really massive increases in the number of malaria cases, seems to have turned a corner again. I must say also that the importance of surveillance systems, the health information system in a country being able to gather information on how many malaria cases are there, how many deaths are there, that's really important. And in that sense, there are additional countries in sub-Saharan Africa which are making great strides to strengthen their surveillance systems.
All right, Dr. Idro, are you confident, are you hopeful that, you know, malaria will finally be eradicated at some point?
I think it's possible, and I think it will happen. One case in point is in eastern Uganda, where the Ministry of Health has been able to apply indoor residual spraying on 3 occasions. And malaria, where a person was getting an infectious bite every day, has declined to just, the clinics are almost empty in that particular area. But we have areas where we have very high numbers of persons, refugees coming with very poor housing. They're having very high loads of infections. So it's different pockets in the country contributing to this individual. The other thing is the asymptomatic malarias. So usually the target is that we treat people who have symptoms. They have a fever.
All right.
But
all right.
1 in 5
we have to leave it there, Dr. Richard Idro and Dr. David Schellenberg. Thank you both for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa on this very important subject. Thank you. Well, let's now take a quick look at other stories making the headlines across Africa. The international health organization Malaria Stops has defended its work in Kenya after the authorities banned it from offering any form of abortion services. Kenya's Medical Practitioners Board made the decision after investigating complaints that the group's adverts were promoting terminations. Malaria Stops said it does not break the law in any country. Nigeria's main opposition candidate, Atiku Abubakar, has promised to boost oil sector investment, cut fuel subsidies, and double the size of the economy by 2025 if he wins next year's presidential election. He also said he will invest $90 billion a year for 5 years in infrastructure. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari launched his election manifesto on Sunday. He says that over the last 4 years, he has laid the foundations to secure economic growth in the future. Now, let's bring you developments now from the Central African Republic, because this past weekend, an ex-militia leader turned member of parliament was handed over to the International Criminal Court to stand trial. Alfred Yekatom is the first CAR national to appear before the court in relation to a period of violence which destabilized the region. Now, it started in 2013 when the Seleka, a coalition of predominantly Muslim fighters, overthrew the government, prompting retaliatory attacks by Christian vigilante groups called Anti-Balaka. Now, Yekatom is accused of commanding around 3,000 members of the Anti-Balaka, which carried out systematic attacks against Muslims. The charges include murder, deportation, torture, persecution, and recruitment of child soldiers, among others. Well, I'm now joined from Jerusalem by Nick Kaufman. He's an international lawyer who has represented clients at the ICC. Thanks for taking time to talk to us on the program. This must be quite a case. What sort of evidence would the ICC have to forward, really, in order for them to have a solid case?
Well, normally in these types of cases, Sophie, what the prosecution starts off with is victims' complaints which are sourced from human rights reports. Thereafter, if they're pursuing the prosecution, as one normally does at these institutions, they would acquire evidence from what is termed in the trade insider witnesses. These would be people who were close to Yekatom, let's say his subordinates. A number of them are actually mentioned in the arrest warrant itself.
Now, Yekatom is the first to be brought before the International Criminal Court, but many would be asking, what about the others, you know, on the Seleka side of things?
Well, this is not a secret. The prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, has devoted 2 teams to investigating the situation in the Central African Republic. One which is investigating crimes committed by the so-called anti-Balaka, and one which is devoted to investigating crimes committed by the so-called ex-Seleka. And it's also anticipated, there's no secret about this either, that she will be seeking further arrest warrants against additional members of the anti-Balaka and also of the ex-Seleka.
Now, you are part of the legal team for Jean-Pierre Bemba. Do you think the credibility of the ICC on the continent still stands?
Well, first of all, I should clarify I'm a former lawyer for Jean-Pierre Bemba. And when we talk about the credibility of the ICC, I think what people normally mean is the accusation, maybe the unfair accusation, that the ICC targets Africa and Africans. With respect to the allegation of targeting Africa, well, there have been a lot of cases in the past where African leaders have self-referred situations in their own country. The prime example being President Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, who referred the situation in the north of his country involving Joseph Kony and the LRA. And with respect to the allegation which is sometimes made of impartiality or lack of impartiality, well, it's a bit hard to accuse the prosecution of being a rubber stamp or rubber stamping the desires of the international community, given acquittals in recent years of Ruto, Kenyatta, and Jean-Pierre Bemba.
All right, Nick Kaufman, we have to leave it there, but thank you for your thoughts on this important story. Thank you. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come, sports. It's arrest day at the African Women's Cup of Nations. Find out why the Ghana coach is not happy with his team despite them winning their first game. I'm Sophie Ikenye, and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top story on this program: concern from the World Health Organization after progress stalls in the fight against malaria in Africa. Now, Amina Mohammed is one of the most powerful women in global affairs as the United Nations Deputy Secretary General. As part of the BBC 100 Women series, she sat down with Zainab Badawi and talked about what her gender and when the world can hope to see a woman as head of the UN.
Oh, soon, I think. I think we narrowly missed it last time, and I think that we will see it soon. I think everyone feels that the time is almost there, and such great efforts were made last time, and incredible women that came to the stage. For the first time, we were actually interrogating perspective SG, so I think it'll be very soon.
And now SDG 5 is the one which promotes gender equality and it promotes women's empowerment. And you have described that one as the docking station of all the other SDGs. What did you mean by that?
I meant that, you know, it wasn't just about us looking at the targets and the goal for gender equality, but that if you look at it as a docking station for the other 16, every single one of those goals feeds off it, and the goal feeds into it. So if I look at education, for instance, gender equality's got to be at the center of the education goal, as it has to be eradicating poverty, as it has to be in cities, or energy, access to energy, and the way that women need to be a central part of that for empowerment. So there is a thread from that goal to others and from those to the goal. And that's really what I mean about it, is that you cannot take it alone. It's an integral part of all 16 goals.
Do you see yourself as principally being there to make life better for females?
I think for everyone, but I do believe that women suffer more disproportionately than men do. And it's again about the issue of where is it a woman sits in society, a girl sits in society, and is allowed in terms of their rights, and they're not. They're not there at the very beginning when you go to school. It's a boy that goes to school and gets a chance of an education and able to reach their aspirations, contribute to the society. A girl doesn't, and so you have to try that much harder for the girl to get in. And I think, yes, I do. I think what I want to do is not apologize for being a girl and not to see it as something that's added on or, you know, it's a, what's the word for it, that we're seen as, we should be grateful for being at the table. And after all, you've got 30% of you around the cabinet table. No, if we can provide the capacity to be 70% around the table, so be it. What we really need to see is that we have equal rights to all those things that allow us to be present and to be effective and to be part of society and our economies. And we're not seeing that.
UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed. Let's find out what's happening in the world of sport. Peter.
Many thanks, Sophie. And it's a rest day at the African Women's Cup of Nations in Ghana. But two big results from the games on Sunday, which was day 2. Defending champions Nigeria beaten 1-0 by South Africa, and Equatorial Guinea late confirmed in the tournament, so lacking in preparation. They were thumped 5-0 by a very determined Zambia. Rachel Gudanaji scored twice in that game. The BBC's Janine Anthony is in Cape Coast, Ghana.
For a weekend that promised so much from the 11th edition of the Women's Africa Cup of Nations, it lived up to expectations. On Saturday, it started with host nation Ghana defeating Algeria by a single goal courtesy of a Gladys Amphibia stunner in the first half. Later on that day, Cameroon had to come back to defeat Mali 2-1 and go straight to the top of Group A. But it was on Sunday that drama ensued in Group B as 8-time African champions Nigeria succumbed to a late Kagatlana Christina strike to lose 1-0 to South Africa, and Zambia threw the group wide open with a 5-0 drubbing of 2-time African champions Equatorial Guinea. Tuesday, we'll see Ghana face Mali, and of course Cameroon take on Algeria, while Wednesday we'll see Nigeria from Group B take on the team Zambia, and of course Equatorial Guinea and South Africa locking horns. But while fans have told us that they've enjoyed the beautiful game of football, they've also mentioned that the game is here to stay. Janine Anthony reporting from Cape Coast.
So hosts Ghana won their first group game, beating Algeria 2-0. But coach Bashir Hayford said he was disappointed at the number of chances squandered by the Black Queens. They play Mali on Tuesday, so how does he expect his girls to do?
Oh, we are expecting a win, you know. I watched them throughout, and I don't think they are better than Ghana. I'm not saying they are not good. We are not underrating anything, but they are not all that too dangerous that we cannot handle.
So the women's tournament is well underway, and the race to the men's competition is becoming clearer. We have 12 of the 23 teams that will join host Cameroon next year. Fantastic scenes in Nouakchott on Sunday night as Mauritania celebrated their first ever qualification for the Men's Africa Cup of Nations. They needed a win to be over Botswana to seal their spot with a game to spare. Ismail Diakite's 83rd minute strike gave them a 2-1 win and sparked off real delight around the stadium and the country. Nigeria also make a return to the Nations Cup following a 1-1 draw with South Africa's Bafana Bafana in Soweto. The Super Eagles had missed the last 2 tournaments. Now, this past weekend, we revealed the shortlist for the 2019 BBC Africa Footballer of the Year Award. You've got until the 2nd of December to make your choice, and every day this week here on Focus on Africa, we'll bring you a short profile of the contenders. First up, and we're going about it in alphabetical order, is Morocco and Juventus powerful defender Mehdi Benatia.
Envie de dire que voilà, on fait ce métier pour gagner des titres. Moi personnellement, j'ai la chance de me préparer chaque jour et de venir ici au centre d'entraînement avec une seule idée, c'est de gagner. C'est de gagner, c'est de gagner. C'est ça qui me fait prendre du plaisir. Ça fait beaucoup d'années que je suis dans le football et maintenant j'ai compris que la chose la plus importante, c'est pas de participer évidemment, c'est de gagner. Donc voilà, pour moi, en plus pour un défenseur, c'est rare qu'un défenseur soit nominé, donc ça me fait très plaisir et évidemment j'ai une pensée pour tous mes éducateurs, tous mes entraîneurs qui m'ont fait travailler, qui m'ont fait progresser chaque jour. Quand je rentre sur le terrain à la Juve, je sais que des millions de Marocains me regardent et c'est une grande fierté de pouvoir être pour tous ces enfants au Maroc. Je pense que notre équipe a appris beaucoup. On a beaucoup appris durant ce mondial. On avait un groupe qui était très difficile, avec bien sûr l'Iran, l'Espagne et le Portugal. Malheureusement, on s'est un peu tué tout seul, j'ai envie de dire, quand on a perdu le premier match contre l'Iran.
Mehdi, it's like my brother. It's a really good captain. If you feel you need to scream on me, he can do it because I know it's for me.
On a montré surtout qu'il y avait une génération très talentueuse, c'est ce que j'ai pu dire aux joueurs d'ailleurs à la fin. Moi je me considère parmi maintenant le passé parce que j'ai quand même un âge avancé, donc il ne me reste plus beaucoup d'années dans le football. Les gens pensent qu'entre arriver second et premier au classement, il n'y a pas une grande différence, mais non, ils se trompent, il y a une énorme différence. Salut à tous, c'est Mehdi Benassia. Voilà, je compte sur vous, soyez nombreux à voter pour moi, pour le BBC meilleur joueur africain de l'année.
Sophie, that's your sports.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Now to Tanzania, where the government has stepped in to end a row over the price of cashew nuts. Farmers were refusing to sell their crops because they say they were not being paid enough. The BBC's Abubakar Famau has the story.
The humble cashew nut is a valuable community in Tanzania. It's the East African nation's main export earner, with more than 220,000 tons expected to be harvested this year. But the industry is in crisis. For weeks, farmers have been in a price row with private traders. The farmers have refused to sell their harvest, saying the prices on offer from private traders do not cover costs.
Cashew nut farming is very expensive, and any price below $1 per kilogram is a loss. The price offered by the government, which is $1.5 per kilogram, is not so good, but at least you can get some profit.
The standoff has forced the Tanzanian government to intervene. President John Magufuli announced the government will buy the entire crop instead, at twice the price offered by traders. He's ordered the army to take control and oversee the buying process.
Once the payment is complete, the army will start transporting the cashew nut to targeted areas, but also to supervise the processing of the crop.
These are piles of cashew nuts being stored in one of the factories here in the southern part of the country. As of now, this factory, the ownership of this factory has been handed over to the government under the supervision of the military.
Some farmers are still uncertain of the fate of their harvest. They think the process is taking too long for them to be paid. The state-owned Tanzania Agricultural Development Bank has assured them, though, that they have enough money.
Cashew nut associations should look at how to add value. And for us as Farmers Development Bank, we have funds to help the farmers benefit from their harvest.
But the Tanzanian opposition party has challenged President Magufuli's decision to spend 600 billion shillings, which is equivalent to $300 million, to pay farmers. They say the government must seek parliamentary approval before buying the cashew nuts. Abubakar Famau, BBC News, Southern Tanzania.
That's all from the program. From me and the rest of the Focus on Africa team, thank you for your company.